Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Coach Dave Syvertsen and me, Sam Rhee. And today our episode is using CrossFit to train for other sports. So we have a lot of athletes at Bison that do play other sports. I mean, whether it's something like pickleball or softball or hockey or basketball or cycling. And it's extremely popular now for sports such as football, basketball, other pro sports to use CrossFit-like techniques to train their athletes. And we just even heard of Courtney. She's Roselle, who we just interviewed, is now the strength trainer for the Montclair State men's basketball team. Yep. And I know you also train a lot of athletes who play other sports. So right. I thought that this would be a good topic. And I know we'll probably dig into maybe some more sports-specific stuff in the future. I don't know. Yeah. But just to sort of give a broad overview of how people can think about CrossFit and how that might play into other sports and what benefits it might have.
Yeah. I was just talking to Kyle Rader about this yesterday. And I think I feel like I've had this conversation 100 times since we've been open, is some of the stuff that we know now that we learned through CrossFit, we wish we knew when we played sports. Because I can vividly remember lifting for football when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade. We were doing bicep curls and quarter squats and leg press and quad, whatever you call it, like the quad extensions. I remember doing like those hamstring curls where you lay down and you kind of like curl that thing. And again, it's probably not a bad exercise, but in terms of sports performance, I remember someone telling you do those, it's going to make you jump higher. It's like, all right, let's do them, right?
I just heard a podcast where their strength coach for football had the idea that they should maximally activate their bodies before games. So they would do a 1 rep max deadlift and then get on the bus for a football game.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, the fitness industry is like several others. There's just a lot of bad apples out there. And within CrossFit, sometimes they get it kind of ruins the big picture. But, I'm not even going to look back on my high school days and blame anyone. Like, I don't think there was much knowledge, like early 2000s, about how to really properly train. But CrossFit just wasn't really around publicly back then or in a big deal back then. I guess it did start early 2000s, but it was not known until I was well out of high school. A lot of my friends were well out of high school. And that's one thing. I have worked with some teenagers that play sports right now, and I try to get this in their heads all the time. I'm like, dude, you guys are so lucky that you're learning this right now, because it's going to make you a better athlete. Doing cleans and deadlifts and snatches, and it's not going to make you a better lacrosse player, but it's going to build your foundation, that it's going to kind of increase your ceiling on the lacrosse field. Like, yes, there's so much skill within different sports, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, that you need to practice that sport, obviously. But you can build your base to the point where your upside, your potential is higher if you properly train. And I definitely, I'm really curious to see, Sam has 2 kids. One of them is playing soccer at Dwight Englewood right now. And I've worked with her in the past, and now she's one of our members. And every time she works out, everyone's like, whoa, look at that. Like, she's doing awesome. Like, she's come such a far way, and I think it's going to make her a better soccer player.
It does. I was actually just about to say that. I was thinking it helps her in the sense that it helps her last better in the second half.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of athletes that we have in the gym say that, like, for my 5K time or for my other thing, it doesn't necessarily make, like, I'm not going to drop, 10 minutes on my 5K time or whatever it is, but right. It feels easier.
Yeah.
My recovery is easier after certain performances, and I am generally a more durable athlete.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of see how people should be thinking about CrossFit and how they should go about it I guess we don't have to go into specific sports per se, right, but just in general.
And I'll tell you what, one of the biggest things I think a teenager can learn from, the biggest benefit a teenager can have from doing CrossFit, and we can go outside like teenagers at some point as well, but they're taught the right way. If you
Technique.
go to if you go to a good CrossFit, and I know there's still some bad ones out there, but for the most part, if you go to a quality CrossFit with quality coaching, quality programming, you get taught how to do stuff correctly. And I watch some of these, like I'm very big into the NFL draft for a few reasons. And every year they're showing videos of some of these guys doing cleans and squats, and they're horrific technique. And some of these guys, it's like, and you feel like you're untouchable when you're a 21-year-old elite athlete, that to them doing cleans is just about getting the bar to your shoulders. I look at it sometimes, I'm like, dude, it's a matter of time before one of these guys gets hurt. They're not being taught the right way. And I think that's still very, very prominent in the fitness, the strength and conditioning field, is there's not as much attention put on technique, recovery, proper programming, progressions, doing things the right way. And I think that a CrossFit gym we're almost probably too protective early on. Like we're still very protective of what Sasha does weight-wise. And it's because she's still so early in the game. She has other things going on, but that's the thing that I would, if I'm a parent, right? I'm a parent now, but my son's 1. When I start getting him in the weight room, which is next week, no, probably in about, I don't know, my guess would be about 10 years, start having him do some fitness related things when he's 10, 11. He will do stuff the right way before he does anything that's really hard.
And I think we're talking about teens, but I think that's even more relevant if you're a 40-year-old starting CrossFit.
Yeah.
Because teens pick up stuff pretty quick.
Yeah.
When you are a 40-year-old, and like I was,
harder to teach.
And I never picked up a barbell before, and I got here, and both you and Tafara are looking at me like, whoa, what kind of technique is that? Like you both literally were like silent watching me try to do a power clean. Like you need a good instruction. And you can't learn this stuff on your own. You can't go to a 24-hour fitness and figure out how to work weights. You can't watch a YouTube video and be like, okay, now I can do this in my garage. And I think it's pretty universal now that strength conditioning is important for pretty much all athletics.
Right.
And how else are you going to get that sort of proper teaching as a 15-year-old or as a 40-year-old?
Yeah.
Probably more important for a 40-year-old even, than to go to a good CrossFit gym.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the physical benefits of CrossFit training. We'll get specific, but I think big picture, macro level is you get taught things the right way. And at some point when you are physically capable, you're strong enough, or you have a reason to really start pushing heavy weights on cleans and squats and lunges. Your base knowledge is there, your motor control is there, that like, all right, this is how it feels, this is why I do things this way. I think that's probably for a teenager the best thing, but also like you said, someone that's a little bit older, that if you're not taught correctly, at some point something bad's going to happen.
Yeah,
or you just don't get the results you should be able to get from it.
That's right. I think one of the things why CrossFit is also good, both for teens and adults, but even for teens, is that it is a group setting. Sasha loves the fact that she has a class.
Yeah.
She is often assigned off-season training.
Yep.
Most sports do, right? They tell you got to do this, that, the other thing. And just the motivation is zilch.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to sit in their garage and just do this stuff.
Yeah.
And even if you are an enthusiast of cycling or something else, in the off season, they tell you, do this, do that, do this. Are you going to really do it? It's really hard to.
Yep.
It's so much easier in general to exercise when you have a group. These classes are very efficient. Sasha, can spend all day doing other stuff, and then she can come in and she has an hour to do something that is extremely efficient for her.
Yeah, and something's planned for her. She doesn't need to set things up, doesn't need to think of the warm up. Again, having a watchful eye while you do stuff helps, which you don't get when you're by yourself. But yeah, it's funny. Like I wish there was a way we could objectively weigh the effort put in when you're with people versus you're not. I think it's widely known as a fact that you're going to try harder when you're around other people more often than not than if you were when you were alone. We don't really have an objective measurement there, but you've been doing this long enough that if you put an athlete into a class, and athletes are usually somewhat competitive, right? That's kind of, what being an athlete is. When you put them around other people, whether they're trying to beat them or not, I don't think that makes them try harder. Some people it does. It's more about like, hey, I don't want to be the weak link in the room. I don't want to be the one person that's not trying hard. Like you're an outcast here. If you come here, you don't work hard, you're an outcast. So I think that being an athlete is really important for you to be around other people that, consider themselves athletes, at least whether it's for their lifestyle or that hour.
So I would say not every aspect of CrossFit has to be applicable for every sport. Like I wouldn't
For sure.
push Sasha to be learning how to do ring muscle ups or, handstand walk. But what aspects of CrossFit are applicable for most sports?
So the biggest thing is core to extremity. The power that you can generate in your core and your hips and how that is translated to the extremities is vital. I would think that's like, if I had to pick one thing I wish I was better at playing sports, because I was a pitcher and I threw hard, but I always wish I threw a little bit harder. And that I really am very confident in saying that if I had stronger hips, if I had stronger core, that would immediately add 4 to 5 miles per hour to a fastball. Just being able to really understand torque and think about, I would say 90% of the movements that you do in CrossFit, maybe not 90, 80% core to extremity, in terms of generating power from your hips, and then it translates to your legs or your arms, right? A soccer player, I actually think female soccer players have the top background from sport into CrossFit. But that also means CrossFit would benefit them in sport because of how much they understand. A, their lower bodies are developed better than most athletes, but B, they understand timing, coordination, and power from the hips being translated to the kick.
Right. Britt Paige Arcee, who recently had a baby. Congratulations.
Yeah, former Division I athlete.
She was I was about to say, she's a D1 soccer player.
She always gives me a hard time. I have to say, in one of our promo videos, that's how she introduced herself. Just so you know, I told her that's what I wanted her to say. So,
so she wasn't humble bragging there?
No, she was not humble bragging. She was. I literally told her to say that. So anyway,
so what kind of movements in CrossFit do you think are applicable?
I mean, think about power cleans, power snatches, dumbbell snatches, even a kipping motion. I think if the motion is safe and you have the timing and coordination of it down. Like that movement of like, hey, I have to let my hips. I talk about this as a coach all the time. Like you have to let your hips do the work, and then you finish it off with the translation of upper body or lower body based on the movement. Even a sumo deadlift high pull, in some levels, even like a box jump, but I wouldn't even say that that's as CrossFit-y as some other movements. I think rowing is a big part of core to extremity, handstand push-ups, or if you don't want to go upside down, you don't want to hurt your neck, push press, push jerks, split jerks, clean and jerks, all this stuff. Like you think about kettlebell swings, all these movements, it's like you have to generate power from your base. And
even
then
lunges.
Lunges. Yeah. And I would say the two other things I have for physical performance for athletes is a unilateral strength. I mean, that is, and it's not just a CrossFit thing. Unilateral strength is probably one of the most important parts to an athlete becoming stronger, because we all have dominant sides, especially in sports. You usually use one side of your body differently than others, right? Like think about what a pitcher does in baseball. You basically start to squat on your right leg every time you're about to throw. Your right arm's the only one doing the work. But if you create a lot of imbalances in your body, it's going to eventually lead to injury. And that's strength and conditioning 101. But you do a lot of that in CrossFit, and especially here. I mean, we do single leg or single arm stuff I want to say every week, sometimes more than 1 week.
Yeah.
And, with females and soccer players, high level of torn ACLs, it's such a common injury in young women that I think that if their muscles around their legs are a little bit stronger, a little bit more stable, I think you can cut that number down a lot.
I was just at a basketball camp and I saw 3 old dudes have torn ACLs in 3 days.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I mean, how many of those guys, I don't know anyone that went down there other than you, but how many of those guys really train for that other than play basketball? And this is where I think that you have to, if you want to be a better basketball player, whether you're, an older guy going to Duke fantasy basketball camp, or you're, a kid that wants to start varsity next year, you can't just play basketball. I feel very confident about that. Is you need to have certain parts of the year where you're training your body. And yes, I'm biased towards CrossFit. That if you go to a good CrossFit gym, there's a lot of unilateral work, a lot of core to extremity work that's going to make you a better basketball player. If you're just playing basketball, or you're an older guy that plays once a week with your buddies on a Sunday night before you go out and have beers, and then you go to a place like Duke and you're trying to be explosive and athletic, your base, it's not there. And that's where like things snap. And like we're in an era of sports right now where there are so many injuries. And even some of the brightest minds in the strength and conditioning field who work for these teams, they can't figure it out. You know, it's, and I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think it centers around overtraining, but I also think that it's just, there's not enough attention put on unilateral strength and building the muscles around the joints.
I will say that they drafted me on my team for the way I looked because I was fit. But then when they saw me shoot and dribble, they were like, oh, that was a mistake.
Oh, we got to trade them. Trade them for a bag of basketballs.
Fitness is not enough. So then let's talk about, in terms of injury prevention, because I think one of the knocks on CrossFit is the rate of injury. But then I will say, honestly, most of the athletes I know get injured. I mean, some get injured in CrossFit just like they would in any sport, but I know so many people get injured doing their rec sports more than anything else.
Oh, for sure. I said this on a previous podcast, but the worst injury I've had in the past 10 years was playing flag football. And it was
on the first play.
It wasn't the first. I think it was like the second drive. I think I had a catch or two. It is true. And I honestly, like, I've been asked to play on softball leagues and football leagues by a couple of buddies over the past couple of years, and I always say no now, and because I don't want to get hurt there. Like, I would want to actually start to train for that a little bit. You know, and I don't have the time to do that. And my focus is on CrossFit, the sport right now. But once my schedule clears, once I'm gone with that, I do want to get into some sort of competitive fix. That's just, I need something, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to join a softball league or a football league and then next week go play. Like, I will go do some like drills, some stuff to kind of wake the movement patterns up that I don't do in CrossFit. And a lot of the issues that come from adult sports, I would say, is the unplanned movement. Like, we don't do any of that in CrossFit. Everything we do is planned. Like, we know exactly what's coming every single time.
Which is safe.
You know, for you to really practice, you know, unplanned movement, that needs to be part of your training. And it needs, just like CrossFit, needs to be start slowly and you build up progressively. And that's where a lot of guys, they don't do that. They go to that Duke basketball camp. They haven't done an unplanned movement at that rate, with that intensity, with that much volume since they were in high school. Right. So it's almost like predictable something like that would happen.
That's very sports specific type of training.
Right.
So then in terms of CrossFit and metabolic conditioning, for example, what kind of benefit would athletes get from being involved in the Metcons that CrossFit does?
So most sports are interval based, right? Like, there are very few sports other than like track or cross country where cycling, where you're moving the whole time. There's, football, soccer, baseball, basketball, it's spurts. You're going back and forth. You're resting, you're going. A lot of CrossFits have that mindset. Whether it's an interval workout or you just have a 5-round workout with wall balls, cleans, and burpees. Like, you go to a station, you rest, and then you go after it. You do a few reps, you rest, then you go after it. And that up and down heart rate and being able to manage that for a long time is a big part of sports. Like, I played a lot of sports growing up, and it was like there were a couple kids that were really good, but they were notorious they just couldn't hold on at the end. And they just got too tired. They got to a point where all the up and down heart rate was just too much for them to handle. They couldn't get the heart rate down ever, and they just kind of crapped out. And I think the conditioning within CrossFit is the best kind of conditioning you can get ready for sports. I really do.
I do feel like when I'm better conditioned in CrossFit, moving from anaerobic to aerobic and back, like where you're doing something super, high power output, short period of time. Yeah. Because those were some, like a barbell, and then you end up going for a run. Right. So you have to keep sort of transitioning back and forth in terms of your effort, power output.
Right. In a sport like basketball, right? Like, and you could say this about, again, most sports, there's different physical demands within each match, each practice, each play. There's some plays you need to be a little bit stronger, right? When you're boxing somebody out, there's days you need to be a little bit faster, chasing after a loose ball. There's certain days you need to be a little bit more coordinated when you're dribbling, right? That, like CrossFit, there's so much variety within sports. Like, that is a CrossFit workout. Is like, you got to go lift a heavy deadlift. All right, now you have to go do burpee box jump over. So it takes a lot of coordination, accuracy, and then you have to go do toes to bar. A lot of core control, breathing management. Even though you're not playing the sport when you're doing CrossFit, you're going through the very similar physical demands that you'll get within a match or a practice or whatever you're doing.
What do you do to tell athletes how to integrate their CrossFit training, say, with their sport?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, I know some players, some athletes that I've worked with over the years, they don't have an off season. Like every month they're on a different team in the same sport. And I do recommend not playing the same sport all year. I think there's got to be an off season, whether your off season is 1 or 2 months or 4 to 5 months. I think that gets a little bit more specific, more individualized. But I think in your off season, that's when you would really want to go ham at CrossFit, right? Where you're there 3-4 days a week and you're putting your attention. Like an off season does not always need to be, sitting on a couch getting treatment. Right? It's just a different level of physical demand.
Right.
And it's getting you away from that sport. Like again, if you're doing the same thing, he always tells kids don't play the same sport all year.
Overuse injury.
Right. You're just doing the same movement patterns over and over. That's again, same thing as CrossFit. If we just did deadlifts and toes to bar every day, our gym would last 2 weeks. Like you can't just do the same stuff over and over. And I think that it's a good way to enhance strength, enhance metabolic conditioning, but also like not just enhancing things, but get away from the same movement patterns that your body's been doing for so long, so often.
What are some of the things that athletes might want to avoid in CrossFit?
Yeah, movement wise, I have this internal debate all the time. I still have it. Is squat snatch a part of general fitness? No, it's not. I mean, I think it's a really fit. You need a lot of fitness to do a squat snatch. Mm-hmm. But if you're a player, that's why if I was training, when I did train kids that were training for football and baseball, like we weren't doing anything that you would consider 70+% strength in a fast-paced workout. But we weren't doing anything overly complex with snatching, with handstand push-ups, with kipping. It was all stuff that could easily be taught, but also you can be like, all right, this can be applied to what you are doing on the field, right? Again, would I tell Sasha, a soccer player, you need to do handstand push-ups to get better at soccer? No. But I'm also not going to say, hey, every time the handstands and push-ups, like don't go upside down. Like, again, I still think there's a lot of athleticism within that movement, core to extremity, especially if you're kipping, right? But I would say that there are like a squat snatch. I would say if there's one thing I really don't think is applicable to sports, it would be squat snatching, overhead squats, stuff where there's a lot of mobility involved, which, again, most people just don't have. And I would say, I mean, like you said, muscle ups. It's a cool movement to do. And if she wanted to come in and say, I want to try to get a muscle up, cool. But it's not for soccer. And if she's on that page, let's go for it. I'm all about it. But I think that if you're really I think simpler is better if you're there for sport training. If you're there for like, hey, I want to get really fit in my off season,
learn skills, just be a fitter athlete, like person.
I think everything's on the table. You just have to be overly calculated with like what weights and what intensity and what volume they're doing.
What about the mental aspect of CrossFit? Because I think that's super helpful.
That was like the one thing the last thing I was going to say is like, I think that the biggest benefit one can get and I'm talking like they really put themselves into CrossFit, not once a week, not with their two buddies, like they're in a real CrossFit program for a few months, is the mental toughness. I've had people, I golfed with someone a few weeks ago and he was saying like, yeah, dude, like CrossFit's helped, like just doing CrossFit workouts helped me like get stuff done around the house when I get overwhelmed. It's just like, he goes, because like, hey, you're going to get through it 1 rep at a time, 1 hour at a time. We're going to get through it. Like we just had some nasty flooding here in this area a couple weeks ago. And like when you clean up a flood in your basement, dude, like it is a huge task.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. And you just 1 at a time, 1 round at a time, 1 round at a time. So like the mental aspect can help athletes out, but it can help normal people out as much, because at the end of the day, everything you do in a CrossFit gym can easily be tied to what you're doing on a field, in a gym, in a match, whatever sport you play, in the pool, right? Is, you really have to keep yourself in the moment and just focus on like, hey, I have to get this task done. Stop thinking about that task. Stop thinking about that task. I need to get this task done right now. All right. Then I move on to my next step. And that's what I think a huge mental component. We could talk about mental toughness too, of just not being a little baby in the middle of a workout, right? Like, like when you play sports, you are eventually going to get to shit that's really freaking hard. You're going to get to people that can do stuff you can't do, unless you are, an Olympian, right? Like there's every athlete that's ever played a sport, you eventually get told you're no longer good enough to play, right? So that's hard to handle for some people. But I think in CrossFit is so humbling that it can really bring you to this place like, hey, I'm not good enough to do this right now, or I'm not physically capable of doing this right now. Take a step. It's okay. You know, what do I need to do to get to the next progression? Yeah.
I think the mental uncomfortableness is something that CrossFit brings for almost every workout.
Yeah.
I am generally uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Every workout.
I think that's part of what some people hate about that. It draws them away.
Yes. And I think that that's the part where if you can embrace that, you know, embrace the suck, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That, you know, and that's where it can be good mental training in the sense that you know what uncomfortable feels like.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best results in life are going to come from what comes from being uncomfortable. Like, I really don't think anyone's truest results come from being comfortable. I think a reward is being comfortable, but I really think that the best result an athlete is ever going to get is accepting that what they want is on the other side of discomfort. Like, you have to go through discomfort to get to what you want.
I see some high-level athletes, and I don't think they like being uncomfortable anymore. I see them trying CrossFit or doing other things, and they just don't want to be in that situation anymore. I think I don't know if it's PTSD or they're burnt out.
I think some of it it's individualized, burnt out. I also think some of it's ego. Like, they were the best at things. They played in college somewhere. They were the best hometown at their sport. They went to college. They were really good at college, and everyone like probably blew smoke up their ass. And then they come here, and I'll tell you what, dude, I don't care how talented you are, you're not going to be good at this when you start. You're not. And when I mean good, I mean in a gym like Bison, you're not going to be one of the top 10 athletes in the gym unless you're here for 3 to 4 years and you work your ass off and you're very good. You know, like, and I can think of a few people right now. They couldn't handle it here because of that reason alone. They saw that it was going to take them too long to learn how to do a freaking kipping pull up, you know, let alone, 12 unbroken muscle ups next to Adam Hawkinson. You know, it takes a long time.
It's humbling.
And there's a progression. And part of the progression is, we could talk about movement progressions, but I think it's a mental progression that you need to be okay with being the worst in the room. You need to be okay with being bottom third in the room, maybe halfway at some point. Okay, maybe not top 30%. Like, you need to be okay with that. And those stretches of time last longer than you think.
Oh, I know. I think one of the things that they say in CrossFit is learn new sports, right?
Right.
And just to refer to that fantasy basketball camp, I haven't played basketball ever.
Yeah.
Like, no organized basketball ever. Maybe 6th grade.
Right.
And I went there, and it sucks to be the worst person. Like, the person that is the detriment on your team. Like, the one.
Team sports are different.
Yeah.
I mean,
and knowing that your skills are so lacking, it's awful.
Yeah.
But to put, especially at, we work, like you said, we worked to get to a comfortable part in our life because that's our reward, right?
Yeah.
Where we are no longer feeling that way. Right. So we've been doing CrossFit for a long time, and we feel very competent at CrossFit.
Right.
Our jobs, we work to get better at our jobs. So we're very competent in our jobs.
Yeah.
And then you're put into a situation where I haven't felt this sucky at something in decades, probably.
Yeah.
Well, since I started CrossFit.
I'll tell you what, though, like, one thing you probably won't even say is you actually were not one of those guys that I didn't play since 6th grade. I just went, there's a few guys from Bison that play on Sunday nights, and that's kind of like, I think that was a really good progression to going to Duke and playing there, because just playing with them on Sunday nights kind of woke up some of the movement patterns, woke up some of the progression. I mean, did you go there and dominate? No, I heard you didn't. And
I sucked.
But it was the fact that you went, and that was, in my opinion, was one of your motivations going there to get ready for Duke?
To play pickup? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like that was an educated, smart decision that you went there. Probably even, I mean, 8 guys that show up to play basketball on a Sunday night are probably really good. And I know the guys that showed up from Bison, they're really good.
They're really good.
Yeah. One of them's Aaron. I used to beat him 1-on-1 all the time.
What?
And,
that guy's got moves.
I know. He's good shot. That's about it. And he's tall. And so he cheats.
He's probably fitter now in terms of getting up and down the court than he used to be. So
he says it all the time. I mean, Aaron was the guy that skipped gym workouts. He would sign his name in on the sheet that he went, and then he left. But he was so good at shooting that he got away with it. But I bring that up because you went there, and started to use that as kind of like a warm-up progression to go and play. If you didn't do that, I bet you would have been even much worse at Duke. Because,
it's hard to be as bad as I was.
I doubt it. You're hard on yourself.
I will say this. I'm glad I did do the pickup. I'm very glad that they were generous enough to let me play with them.
But mentally, we're talking about mental training right now for athletes. I think that mentally helps you out just a little bit.
Yes.
Just to touch a ball.
Yes. And just to be uncomfortable and learning.
Right.
Like forcing yourself to learn is really important. And I think when athletes are good at something, like let's suppose you're really good at soccer and you come in and you're learning a skill set in CrossFit that one is helping you cross train and be a better, more capable athlete. But two, you're learning different movements.
Yeah.
There's something about your brain where you're learning body awareness and kinesthetics that is just overall good. Yeah. Even if it's not sport specific, it's helping you. And like you said, it's also preventing you from overuse injuries. Yeah. I think CrossFit helped me be a conditioned player. It didn't help me with any of the mental stuff, the skill stuff, any of that. But that's on me. Right. And I know I will, but it did light a fire in me, and then I'm going to continue to do that. Like you said, you're at some point going to get back into some sort of cross competitive sports because that's what drives so many of us. That's why a lot of us play rec sports. Right. But let me put it this way. I'm really glad I did CrossFit before I went.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because
you might have been one of those guys that tore the ACL.
I would have, because I not only would I sucked, but then I would have sucked and been unfit. Right. Which would have been horrible.
Yeah, it was double whammy. So another thing I think that an athlete can learn from CrossFit, and again, you have to be at the right CrossFit to benefit from this, but you need to learn how to be coachable. Like you a huge part, like I'm really into coaching, and like I have thoughts of down the road, once Bra gets older, like trying to get more involved in sport coaching. And I know that there's just a lot of kids out there. Mm-hmm. They don't understand. It's not even a respect thing. They just don't understand how to take in coaching. Mm-hmm. And I think at a CrossFit gym, again, a good one, our coaches are pretty hands-on.
They're really good at getting to athletes. Right.
And just teaching little things like, hey, like you're doing this wrong. I'm not trying to come down on you, but like try this, right? And you can, and it goes to show like sometimes it's humbling for an athlete, and I think teenagers are easier to deal with in that regard than established adults that think they're successful in everything in life, so they just won't listen, right? But I think that a kid can really see, all right, this coach is putting a lot of attention on me right now. They're trying to get me better at this skill. I need to slow myself down a little bit and just do what they're telling me to do. That is, like, if you get to any sort of high-level sport, maybe not always high school, but if you go beyond high school, that should not be your first experience dealing with the coach.
Being coachable is one of the big attributes that they talk about for an athlete, right? Yeah. And it's hard to be coachable if you've had crappy coaching. Yes. And I think at great CrossFit places, they are really good at coaching. Yeah. They're so used to trying different cues, methods, means of communication. Yep. Sometimes it's not visual, sometimes it's tactile, sometimes it's demonstration, sometimes it's other analogies. Right. I was watching Liz the other day on the toes to bar overhead squat workout, and she was working with 2 or 3 different athletes in that class, giving different cues for three different types of cues.
That's a sign of a good coach.
For 3 different athletes. It was amazing. Yeah. And, you will see a wide range of coaches in high school, some great, some not so great, college, at fitness gyms. But I think CrossFit focuses and places a premium on coaching and how to help people learn movements. Yeah. And I think if you're an athlete and you get that kind of instruction, now you say, all right, now I know what a good coach is doing. Right. Yeah, I can become a more coachable athlete. Right. And I think, I watch Sasha, like you've seen her, in terms of her learning and her progression. Yep. And, is she coachable? She is coachable. Very. But she's also receptive to good coaching. Right. I've heard her complain about bad coaches.
Yeah, no, I know. And I had plenty of bad coaches growing up too. But I'll say, like what you said, what to look for in a good coach, but also how to respond to different kinds of coaching, right? Like I coach different than Liz, right? Liz coaches different than Mike. Mike coaches different than Adam and all of our coaches. I don't want to go one by one, but all of you, all right?
Ash,
and
blah, blah, blah.
yeah, all right. But like that, we have different personalities, but they're all good coaches, all of them. Like you're not going to coach at Bison if you're not a good coach. They're all good coaches, but some of them are a little bit more like dickish sometimes when they coach, right? Some of them are a little bit more like bubbly and happy. But they're both good coaches, right? Some are more objective. Some are more caring about your feelings, right? Some are more direct. Some are more indirect. I think it's important for an athlete to be able to respond to different kinds of coaching, because I'll tell you what, you don't get to pick who your coach is. Like you can even go to a college.
So true.
You can go to a college and say, I went to this college because Nick Saban's the coach of Alabama. He might retire next year. Guess what? You no longer get to pick your coach. So
you're not picking the offensive coordinator coach who you're probably hanging out with more than Nick Saban.
Right, exactly. So yeah, because he can change that whenever he wants, right? So I think that it's important for an athlete to be able to take in coaching from different styles, because if you're only going to respond to like bubbly, happy, go lucky, like you're in for a rude awakening when you come across a coach that's, the kind of coaches I had growing up. Like they were not your friend, and they wanted you to know they were not your friend, but they helped a lot because but only if you were to take it in. Some people will shut down. If they have a hard, strict coach, they shut down. And I think that, we always say, we talk about new coaches at Bison and who we want to bring on or try to get to bring on. We want different personalities. They all have the same base level passion for helping people and good communicators, but there are different personalities in here, and I think that's really important.
I think that's really so true, and I think for all athletes, they should really be considering CrossFit as a base for education, for conditioning, for strength,
mental training,
coaching, and we could probably get into some of the sports-specific stuff at some point, maybe talk to athletes, maybe some other coaches in the future. But, I love it, and I think that that's probably one of the biggest pluses about CrossFit.
Yeah, I wouldn't think, like, you can probably echo this as a parent. I've had grandparents say this to me, parents. A big part of coaching for me personally, and a big part of what being a parent for me will be, is I wish I knew this stuff when I was that age. And I think if you're a teenager listening to this, or honestly, this can be applied to anyone, when we coach the way we do, when we teach things the way we do, whether it's about your mindset, whether it's about how you're physically moving, how your lifestyle supporting your way of working out, it's never coming from a place of do what I do. This is the right way. You're doing it the wrong way. It's, you try to teach people from your own mistakes or things that you just wish you had. I wish I had this when I was 15, 16 for a lot of reasons. Physical development, but also mental development.
Absolutely.
Development of my confidence. I think I became a harder worker after I did CrossFit. Like everyone's like, oh, you work so hard. I'm like, honestly, if you knew me growing up and early college, I didn't work hard. And I think doing CrossFit, because it taught me, like, it takes a long time, but if you put the work in, you're going to see results.
Absolutely.
And nothing has taught me in life that the way CrossFit did.
Well said.
All right, cool.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.